Castlevania started off as a pretty straightforward series. These were side-scrolling action games where you whip your way through a handful of distinct levels, filled with Halloween monsters. Sure, the series experimented in exploration, like with Rondo of Blood's Hidden Paths, the level select screen in Belmont's Revenge, and the absolutely incoherent Castlevania 2, but mostly the series was completely linear. That is, until Koji Igarashi joined the team to head up a new entry in the series. He wanted to try something different, something that would make Castlevania games last a bit longer for their players. And so, inspired by The Legend of Zelda, not Metroid, as one might assume, Konami made a Castlevania game that took place in a single giant level, a twisty, maze-like interconnected castle, a game where you find new powers to unlock new paths, hunt down secret rooms to discover hidden loot, and grow in power over the course of the game. Which all makes 1997's Castlevania Symphony of the Night a perfect game to look at in my video series about open-ended level design, Boss Keys. At the start of this game though, you perhaps wouldn't guess that Symphony of the Night is a non-linear experience. We begin with a playable flashback, the ending of Rondo of Blood, redone for the PS1. The game wants to start on an action-packed high note, this fight between Richter and Dracula. And this is a trope that lots of games will go on to use, like this gory 300-style battle at the very beginning of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And then we get to take control of our actual character, Alucard. And again, the game wants to start on a high, so Alucard begins with some of the best weapons in the game and can murder pretty much everything with one hit. Until death shows up and steals your stuff.
What?
This is another well-worn trope, the abilities, where we get to play with all of the best stuff in the game before it's cruelly taken away and we're left weak and underpowered. This lets the game preview just how complex the game will eventually get, and also gives players the motivation to keep playing so they can get all of that power back. But even after this, Symphony still plays out more like a classic Castlevania game. The first part of the adventure is this linear progression through a bunch of rooms. There's a few branching paths and dead ends to note, like this room that's locked by a magic door, but mostly you're just making straightforward progress. Where Super Metroid immediately constrains you in a small area and quickly asks you to backtrack to show you that the path forward isn't necessarily in front of you, Castlevania gives you a good hour or so of just marching onwards. Eventually you'll get to the outer castle wall, and if you open up your map, you'll see that you have walked the entire width of the castle. In this opening track, the game has shown you just how big the world is going to be, except you've only explored on one axis. This is also a good navigational trick. In real life, we orientate ourselves by having a big central hub that forks off into different sub-areas. Think of high streets that spill off into side roads, and shopping malls that have central walkways that connect up to shops. In Symphony of the Night, almost all of its main sections connect up to a central pathway that runs horizontally through the castle. The central pathway that you just walk through at the beginning of the game. Anyway, this is where we finally hit a dead end. The path here keeps falling apart underneath our feet, and we simply can't move on with our current abilities. If we explore in here though, we'll find the librarian turned shopkeeper, and his cheapest two items will prove useful. The Jewel of Open, which takes care of magic blue doors, and a castle map. At this point, Symphony of the Night is finally a Metroidvania. We've got a new power, but we'll need to go back to go forward. Handily, the unfinished map we just bought shows us two potential areas to explore. This staircase on the left, and this area down below. So we can either walk back down here, or use the fast travel room to zip back here and explore the staircase. However, only one route is correct. We really should go to the Royal Chapel over on the left, but you can also end up going completely the wrong way and find yourself deep down below the castle. This is something that happens a few times in Symphony of the Night. It lets you go the wrong way and explore areas way before you're supposed to, and that has advantages and disadvantages. It's cool because it lets you explore the castle on your own terms. You're not just locked into doing exactly what the designers need you to do next, but you're wandering around and organically stumbling upon interesting places and spooky bosses. It also lets you add to your mental map and the in-game map, which will prove useful later. And most importantly, while this lower area is a dead end in terms of progression, it's not entirely a waste. There are items to find that boost your health and your ammo, there's an unlockable relic that lets you breathe underwater, and all sorts of items and swords and shields that you might fancy using. But this diversion can be a touch confusing, and leave players wondering if they're just missing something, or should cut their losses and explore somewhere else. Anyway, the actual correct path is the Royal Chapel, and this area really shows how Symphony is filled with distinct, memorable locations. This massive staircase and these giant bell towers and this epic stained glass room are all very eye-catching, and it's completely different to every other place on the map. This really helps with your mental organisation of the castle's layout, and the world design is similar to Dark Souls in its variety. At the top of the Royal Chapel is the Leap Stone, which lets you double jump, and the game opens up a fair bit again. Here's how much of the castle we could explore a second ago, and here's how much we can explore now we have the Leap Stone. Again though, the game gives us a bunch of places we can explore that actually end up being dead ends. We can pop into the catacombs, but we can't go on without the Echo of Bat power-up. We can now jump across these areas in the castle keep, but we can't reach Dracula's room. And we can explore more of the long library, but we're stymied by this grate. This time, however, it's way more painful because the actual path forward is really tricky to find. It's actually here, in this clock room at the centre of the castle. Only the path only opens up once every other minute or something, so you could completely miss that there even is a path when you first visit the room. I certainly did. And there's no strong association between being able to jump higher and this clock room. It's not like Super Metroid where you know you want to jump up to this spooky face, but you just can't leap high enough yet. Okay, so if you actually do find your way up here, you'll get to the Colosseum and can unlock the Mist power-up. Unlike before, there's only two places where you can use it. One takes you into a single room with a couple items, the other immediately gives us the next power-up, the Form of Bat. If you forgot about those areas though, or hadn't seen them before now, it's going to be hard to find them. Symphony of the Night has a large world map, and it opens up quickly. It's kind of like Metroid 1, in that after only getting a couple critical abilities, the player is presented with so many places to check in order to find the path forward. At this point in the game, I personally found myself just sort of poking at unexplored bits of the map. You know, I'd spot doors that I haven't been through yet, and rooms that I haven't checked off, and just went over there to see if I could make a little extra progress. I also started to notice how a lot of the rooms are quite boring to backtrack through. The Wolf power-up and its upgrades certainly help, and the fast travel points that are dotted around the map speed things up also. Once you get the Bat power-up, the game opens up even more. This is only the 4th critical power-up, but now you can explore pretty much the entire castle and go off and explore loads of new routes. In fact, while you can get 5 relics at the beginning of the game, 3 after getting the Jewel of Open, 2 after getting the Leap Stone, and 1 after getting the Mist form, you can now go get a whopping 10 different relics with the Bat, littered all over the castle. It might have been nice to spread them out a bit more across the game. One other place we can go with the Bat is to Dracula's Keep, and fight Richter, and end the game. Just like the wind. Wait, what? Oh yes, the classic bad ending fake-out. Hopefully at this point you'll realise that the ending was a bit anticlimactic, and that there's loads more of the castle to explore, and Richter probably isn't a bad guy. And so you should probably load up your save game and see what else you can find. I really like this idea. It makes the game feel mysterious and surprising, and it encourages some proper exploration off the beaten track. Like, maybe you'll fly down here and find this gold ring. It's relatively easy to find, and it's got an interesting item description. Where ... clock. A clue in an item's description? That certainly reminds me of something. The other ring is a lot harder to find. You need to go here and get the Echo of Bat, then go down into the catacombs and fly through this dark corridor. This gives you the Spike Breaker, so you can go all the way back up here and get the Silver Ring. Put the 2 item descriptions together and they say, where in Clock Tower. So you do just that, a new area opens up, and Maria gives you a special item that lets you see that Richter is being controlled by Shaft. kill him, and something absolutely bonkers happens. The game isn't over yet, not by a long shot, because there's an entirely new castle to explore. Well, it's just like the old one actually, only it's now upside down and filled with harder enemies. Personally, I found this section to be totally lame. Traversal is really annoying unless you go everywhere in bat form. There's no longer any real surprises about what rooms will be around the next corner, and pacing-wise, I just kind of wanted the whole thing to be done by this point. It felt like this annoying extra epilogue that I didn't want to bother with. What I do like, however, is that the only mission in this part of the game is to hunt down 5 items: the ring, eye, tooth, rib, and heart of Vlad. And you can do them in any order, where the beginning part of the game is strictly linear, get the jewel, then the leapstone, then the mist, then the bat. The latter half is more open. Now you're familiar with the game, you can get the gold and silver rings in either order, and can get the 5 pieces of Vlad in any order you like. This is what I wanted in Super Metroid, where I said it would be cool to let you fight the last 3 bosses in any order, and it's similar to the 4 Lord Souls at the end of Dark Souls. If you get all those pieces of Vlad, you can finally fight the actual final boss of the game and see the proper ending. So, Symphony of the Night is a thrilling game. Its gothic castle spills out in all directions, with distinct areas, gruesome bosses, and tons of tiny surprises. But I think it makes a pretty fundamental mistake. It allows a lot of exploration by opening up the castle very quickly as you unlock key abilities, and I admire that. I like how it's so open. But because the first half of the game sticks to a very linear structure, it means you can be wandering around a huge castle for ages, just finding loads of dead ends while you're looking for the one single location you can go to next to make any meaningful progress. Of course, there's lots of other things you can find in those dead ends, like relics and items and health potions, but a lot of that stuff is pretty pointless because the game is so easy, and because most of the swords, shields and armor will be actual trash in comparison to the stuff you're already carrying. So ultimately, it's a game that is at once both really open and really closed, and that can lead to some frustration. I hope that didn't come off too harsh. There's loads to love about Symphony of the Night, it just makes a few stumbles in its world design that other games might want to avoid. And games have definitely been taking inspiration. New indie releases like Chasm and Time Spinners are totally influenced by Symphony, and I swear there's a little of this in Dark Souls as well. Plus, the entire Castlevania series pretty much exclusively shifted towards this style of level design in games like Aria of Sorrow and Portrait of Ruin. Players just needed a way to differentiate these new, open-ended games from the more linear ones of the past. One player suggested, a little snarkily, to call them Castlevanias and Metroidvanias. And it stuck, giving us a name for all sorts of games that fit this level layout. And speaking of Metroid, that's where we're going to next for our first 3D game of this season, the GameCube's wonderful Metroid Prime. See you then.